Un mundo tan desafiante, nuestro reto es ser la luz, dar amor día con día.
Ven y seamos esperanza, testimonio.
Let's begin with prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dios te salve María.
Gracias, Señor es contigo. Bendita eres entre todas las mujeres y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre, Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros los pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amén.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, that's all the Spanish I know, is the Hail Mary. So I hope your English is better than my Spanish. But it is a blessing to be here today. I've been traveling around the world speaking on chastity for 25 years, but today is my first day ever getting to speak in Mexico. So I'm joined. I'm especially happy to see those of you who've been able to come as husband and wife together to this today. I had heard of one married couple. They were having some problems, and they went to marriage counseling. Wife said to the counselor, my husband here, he's not as affectionate as he used to be. He's not as thoughtful. He's not as romantic. And the husband just rolled his eyes. Now, the therapist got an idea what was going on, so he got up from behind his desk and walked to where the wife was, and he took the wife in his arms, and he gave her a long, passionate kiss. And then he sat her down and went back to his desk. He said to the husband, now this is what your wife needs about 3 times a week. And the husband said, okay, I can bring her here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Well, a little misunderstanding here with intimacy, and I know you'll agree with me that the young people today have so many misunderstandings when it comes to intimacy. And what we've got to understand, though, is that we, not the government, not even the church, we are the primary sex educators of the kids, as the parents. But here's the challenge in this. How many of you, give me a show of hands, how many of you were given by your parents a clear, adequate, and convincing explanation of the church's teachings on chastity? Okay, we've got 1. Do we have 2? We have 3, 4, 5. Wow, there's like 8. That's all. That is way more than normal, and almost 10 out of like 200. But now, here you are being expected to give your teenager what was never given to you during a time in history that makes it more difficult than ever for them to be pure. And you look at culture right now, it's overwhelming. I mean, I spoke at a high school recently. We had 87 girls pregnant on campus. One of the girls we met was 7 months pregnant, and she just told her parents the news. They didn't even know she was 7 months pregnant. But she didn't know how to tell them the full story. The full story is that her boyfriend lives in her closet. That's right. Her boyfriend's been living in her closet for about a year. She brings him up leftovers after dinner. He hops out the window to hang out with friends at night. This has been going on for a year, and the parents had no idea. And so the moral of the story is when you get home from this weekend, check the closet. So I'm sure things are going better at your place. But, I mean, unbelievable breakdown in the family. One boy came to me, and he said, Jason, I know what you mean about divorce. He said, Jason, my dad is on his 9th marriage. The boy was 16 years old. Another boy came to me, he said, yeah, I know what you mean about pornography. He said, I go home from school on the weekends, and I watch 12 hours of pornography on Saturday, 12 more hours on Sunday, and then I come back to school. He said, I don't even enjoy it. It's disgusting, but I don't know how to live with it anymore. Now imagine that 15-year-old boy asks a girl out into a relationship. What is going to become of that? And so what's happening, these boys are getting exposed younger and younger, 9 to 11 years old. One girl wrote me a letter, and she said, yeah, I was addicted to really bad pornography for a long time, many years. And she said, I finally broke free of it, and I haven't looked at pornography in 2 years. And she said, I'm hoping I can stay strong, because next year I'm going to be in high school, and I know it's going to be more difficult then. This is a girl that's been struggling with stuff since grade school. You hear that, and then you hear the confusion with just human sexuality, what it even means to be male and female. The girl I know is going to Stanford University, California. She pulls out her cell phone. She said, Jason, look at this. She said, I'm going to Stanford University in the fall. Here's my college application. Look, I have to pick my gender to get into Stanford. Watch this. And she starts scrolling through the list of genders. There were 18 genders to pick from, but male and female were not options on the list to get into Stanford University. What is going on there is, I think, what Vatican II said, that when God is forgotten, the creature itself grows unintelligible. That if we lose sight of supernatural realities, it will come to the point where we can't even see natural realities anymore. And in the midst of all of this bad news, a lot of parents think, oh, we're up against so much, it's all bad news, but it's really not all bad news. In fact, they've been studying the sexual activity of teenagers for decades. And what the researchers are finding here is the sexual activity among teenagers in the last 30 years, the rates of sexual activity have been constantly going down. Last year is the lowest they've recorded so far. The majority of high school students are virgins, and the majority of students who have had sex admit they wish they waited longer. It was kind of a disappointment. There's people wanting to start over. And so there's good news. And they ask the kids, why are you choosing abstinence? Are you afraid you're going to get pregnant? Are you afraid you're going to get AIDS? Those reasons were at the bottom of the list. The number one reason why they're choosing abstinence is it is against my religious and moral values. Number one reply. There is a resurgence that's going on. There's good news, because I think if we can just explain what Pope John Paul II taught, that chastity can only be thought of in association with the virtue of love, we're going to win this battle. Because if they don't understand the connection between chastity and love, it just seems like a list of prohibitions and restrictions. They need to understand chastity frees you to love. Because if I can't say no to my sexual impulses, saying yes to them means nothing. A man who never gets self-control over his own body, when he gets married, will never even make love to his own wife. He will use her body as an outlet for what he thinks of as his sexual needs, and this is not making a gift of himself. And her heart can tell the difference. And so chastity frees you to love. But it frees you to know if you're being loved too, especially for the girls. I just told the teens upstairs, a girl came to me once, and she's with this dating guy, terrible guy. He treats her like garbage. And I said, sweetheart, you deserve better than him. Break up with him. She said, I can't just break up. I've given him everything. My virginity, my reputation. I can't let go of it all. I said, I know. Just tell him no more sex. Watch what happens. She said, okay. She took off her necklace and gave it to me. She said, he makes me wear this. He's really possessive. I said, okay, I'll throw it away for you. And she left. 5 minutes later, she came back, happy. She said, I dumped him. He said, that was quick. She said, yep, I told him no more sex. He slammed his locker shut. He threw a book at me. He said, where's your necklace? She said, I gave it to the chastity guy. She tested his love. Like, do you love me? Do you want me? Or do you only want the pleasure that you're getting from me? And so what I explained to the young women is like, look, what you win a man with is what you keep him. I mean, if you win him with pleasure, then you have to keep him with pleasure. But here's the problem. He can get pleasure anywhere. He can get it off the internet. He can get it from another girl. It's a repeatable asset. If you win him with your body, then you have to keep him with your body. But here's the problem. Every woman has a body. I can't remember the last woman I met who did not have a body, okay? This is a repeatable thing. But if you win him with who you are as a human being and you're unrepeatable, the relationship is more likely to last. So how do we sell the kids on this? Well, top 10 list of what to do at home. First and foremost, people say if you want to get your kid to save sex for marriage, send them to that Catholic school. And if that doesn't work, send them to the Catholic youth group. And if that doesn't work, send them to the Catholic correctional facility. And if that doesn't work, then pray. Like, no. Our most important role is our interior life of prayer. And not just praying for the kids, but I'm not going to be a better father to my sons than I am a son to the Father. If I don't know how to receive the love of God, how can I transmit this? And some parents think, well, look, we've been doing that. We've been going to Mass. We've been praying the rosary. We've been reading the Bible. And now my son's living with his girlfriend. And he doesn't want to go to church anymore. And it's my fault. I should have done this. I should have done that. Don't blame yourself. Because look, who's the best parent in the universe? It's the Heavenly Father. Now look at how messed up all of his kids are down here, okay? It ain't his fault, all right? And just look at the saints in the church. Today is this feast day of Saint Therese of Lisieux, the little flower. She was a saint. Her parents were saints. Her sister got kicked out of Catholic boarding school 3 times for behavioral problems. I love it. It's like, did you not get the memo? Like, we're all being saints? By a saint, but chosen for path. Now, she got her act together and she became a nun when she was 37, but she took a detour, and that's okay. And so to realize, okay, first and foremost, prayer. And know that God will answer those prayers. You might not see the fruit of it yet, but those prayers are welling up like water behind a dam. And that dam could be your kid's free will. I don't want religion shoved down my throat. Years of the weight of that prayer, the dam's going to split. I don't know if it's going to happen today or when they're 40 or on their deathbed, but those graces are going to be applied, so persevere in the prayer. I know God answers the prayers. I was with a bunch of nuns in New Jersey. They started a program called Adopt a Nun, where you could financially take care of the living expenses of a retired nun, and in exchange, she'd pray for whatever you wanted. Now, I don't know how that gels with canon law, but they pulled it off, and so the media shows up. We want to do a story about adopting nuns. Have you had a miracle yet? The sister said, yeah, we've had miracles. And they're like, well, what? I said, call up the married couple. They called up the married couple. Husband and wife had had numerous miscarriages. They couldn't have a full-term pregnancy, so they adopted a nun. And they asked her to pray that they would have a family. And they said, yeah, we have the letter here from the convent. Dear Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, thank you for financially taking care of me. In exchange for your generosity to me, not only will I be praying for you, I will have every single nun in the convent praying you would have a family. Oh, but P.S., be careful. Sometimes you ask God for an apple, and he wants to give you an orchard, signed Sister Mary so-and-so. Yes, their quadruplets were born on Father's Day. And so, persevere in the prayer, but join the prayer to fasting. Because to pray without fasting is like boxing with an arm tied behind your back. It doesn't matter who you are as a boxer, you're not effective with one fist. So the prayer, the fasting, and then offering up of your sufferings. If you were raised in a Catholic home or you went to Catholic grade school, you remember the nuns, offer it up. You don't like it, offer it up. It's too hot in Mexico, offer it up. You know, what does that mean? It sounds like you're telling me to shut up in a religious way. And it is that, but it's deeper. The message of offering up comes from St. Paul. He said, I rejoice in my sufferings because I make up in my body, in my sufferings, what's lacking in the sufferings of Christ for the church. Now, it sounds blasphemous. Paul's making up what's lacking in the sufferings of Christ. Did Jesus not suffer enough? What he's getting at, Jesus didn't suffer so you wouldn't have to suffer. Jesus suffered so we would know how to suffer. And if we suffer in union with Christ, you become powerful as Jesus Christ crucified is powerful. One priest I know said that in the mission field, in the apostolate, the money that is needed to buy souls is suffering offered with love. That is the currency. So if you have suffering in your life, and a difficult spouse, alcoholic spouse, unemployment, cancer, a difficult kid, every form of human suffering, when joined to the cross, takes on the power of the cross. John Paul II knew this well. A priest came to Pope John Paul II with a broken leg once, and he showed the Pope his leg. He said, Holy Father, will you bless my leg? It's broken. John Paul took one look at him and said, don't waste your suffering. And then he smacked him. And then he blessed him after the smack, so he got the blessing. But there's value in human suffering. In fact, a friend of mine almost lost his baby after the baby was born. And the baby was in all these surgeries and things. The baby lived. But he said that first week of his little life, we suffered so much, not knowing if he'd survive or not. He said, if I didn't know how to offer up that suffering for the church, for my family, for souls, he said that would have been so much grace lost. He said that would be like having a winning lottery ticket in my hand, and I don't know what the numbers mean. All of the wealth gone because I don't know how to read it. But if we can offer up our suffering and join that to fasting and prayer, it is the greatest force in human history. Second point, I would say, for helping the kids to practice this in lifestyle, set the standard high and make it clear. Abstinence until marriage. Not, I want you to be abstinent, but if you're going to do it anyway, at least use protection. No, you would never tell your kid that with drinking and drugs. Don't drink and drive. But if you're going to drink and drive, drive slowly on the way home from the party. No, you don't give them that message. Besides, the whole idea of safe sex is terribly degrading to women because it reduces a woman to her genitals. Because as long as she doesn't have herpes, and as long as she's not pregnant, she's safe. Oh, she's safe? How come she's crying her eyes out after a broken sexual relationship? They use protection because sex is not a biological act, it's a human act. It involves the heart, the soul, the mind, the memories, and to give a kid a condom and telling him, now you're safe and protected, it is a false sense of security. So set the standard high, abstinence, and clear until marriage. Not until you're older, until you find the right person for you. That's way too vague. In fact, there was a TV show with a psychologist in America where he's talking about teens and sex. And he said, what we learned today is you should not be engaging in this behavior until you're mature and you are in a relationship where you are ready. What? Don't do it until you're mature? I don't know about you, but when I was 15 years old, I had never been more mature in my entire life as I was at that moment. I was maturing by the hour. I mean, tell them not to do it till you're ready, it's crazy. In fact, I was speaking at a high school in New York, and before the talk, the teacher told me, I'm sorry, we need to cancel the talk. And I said, I'm sorry, did something come up? And she said, well, the teachers here are afraid you're going to say a specific word during your presentation. And I said, oh, but ma'am, don't worry. This is the public school talk. There's no religious content in it. I've given it at Harvard, Princeton, the Air Force Academy. No God in the public school talk. She said, that's not the problem. She said, the teachers here are afraid you're going to say a specific word. And I said, okay, what's the word? I'll just use a different word. She said, they're afraid you're going to say the word marriage during your talk. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you want me to tell the kids to save sex for? Like, save it for later? I'm like, that's after sixth period, lady. Like, where's this finish line here? And they canceled the talk because I refused not to speak the word marriage. And so we need to be not only speaking it, but living it all the more boldly. And so to set that standard high and clear, abstinence until marriage. Third point I would say is to be a parent first and not a buddy. Because none of us want to be rejected by our kids, and you always feel like you're walking on the tightrope here. Well, I don't want to be too strict, because then they'll rebel, but I don't want to be too lenient, because then they'll do dumb things. Maybe I am too strict. He calls me Hitler. I don't know if he's exaggerating, like, am I too strict? And you tend to doubt yourself. But the way I look at it is your kids already have enough buddies, but they only have one set of parents. And when you have firm boundaries and curfews and rules, it gives them permission to blame you for why they can't be stupid. And so, for example, one girl told me, yeah, she said she was on a date with a boyfriend, and the boyfriend said, hey, I think it's time for us to take our relationship to the next level because we've been together for like 3 weeks now and everything. And she said, oh, I know what you mean. She pulled out her phone and she said, look, here's my dad's phone number. Give him a call, and if he says I can do this tonight, then I'm ready to go. And the boy's like, I don't want to use up all your cell phone minutes there, sweetheart. The girl knew my father has me on this one because her father spoke to her about this stuff. He was not a passive dad. He intervened. And dad, we have to talk. In fact, I know one dad, his teenage girl came to him and said, Daddy, I want to go to the Notre Dame football game with my friend Megan on Saturday. And he said, oh, that sounds like a lot of fun, but you know, that's 7 hours away from here. How are you going to get there? And she said, that's where you come into our plan. Because we want you to drive us to Indiana. And he's like, honey, I have so much to do around the house on Saturday. I can't just drive 2 girls to Indiana. And she pushed him on. She said, Dad, she is my best friend forever. And her dad is your friend. And we really need a daddy-daughter football Saturday. What do you say, Dad? And she said, and besides, Dad, before long, I'm going to be off to college. And these memories that we could have made will be gone. He's like, fine. Calls the other dad. He's like, what are we going to do? 2 teenage girls and some like 7-hour car ride. So they made a plan. Early Saturday morning, they began the drive. And they said to the girls, we have a 7-hour car ride with you. So we thought we'd spend this time talking to girls about chastity and human sexuality. The girls like, jumped out the window. But he said, when we got home, he said, you know what my daughter said to me? She said, thank you, Dad, for having the guts to talk to us about what we were too embarrassed to talk to you about. Thank you for initiating that conversation. Now, usually, that thank you doesn't come, but nonetheless, we have to be bold. I saw this video of this mom where she's sitting in her kitchen, and by herself, and she's got a glass of wine, she's got some ice cream, and she says, you know what? All 3 of my teenagers are mad at me right now for the same reason. She said, you know why they're mad at me? Because I parented them. She's like, well, yeah. She's like, I don't care if you're mad at me for that. She said, it is not my job to be liked by a teenage kid. She just starts eating the ice cream. She said, it is my job to raise you in such a way that I would actually want to hang out with you when you get old enough, okay? And so, if you don't like my rules, I don't care. She starts drinking the wine. She starts putting the wine in the ice cream, stirring that around, slumping that in. But she had this bold indifference, like, you don't have to like my rules. In fact, if you do like all of my rules, I am probably a horribly neglectful parent. And so, to be the parent first and not a buddy. And obviously not to not have a friendship with your kids, but there's a hierarchy there. And so, first thing, second, third, fourth thing I would say, delay the onset of dating. The kids today are under this ridiculous pressure. You don't have a boyfriend, you don't have a girlfriend, like you've never kissed anyone before. What's wrong with you? You're 9 years old, like what are you waiting for? Ridiculous, but look at the numbers. The sociologists studied this. Here's what they found out. If a kid starts dating, they surveyed 800 high school kids. If they start dating at the age of about 7th grade or younger, which is about 13 years old, students who start dating at that age or younger, 90% of the girls and 70% of the boys will lose their virginity by the middle of high school. But if the students started dating at the age of 16 or older, more than 80% of them are still virgins in the middle of high school. There is tremendous wisdom in delaying the onset of dating, in keeping the younger girls away from the older boys who don't have enough social skills to date a girl their own age to begin with. And the girls say, but Mom, he's so mature. Honey, if he's mature as you think he is, he'd be dating girls his own age and not climbing down 3 years younger. But it's not enough, in my opinion, to tell the kids, don't date, don't touch her, don't have sex. No. We actually have to teach them how to date. That's the problem. All we give them is thou shalt nots, and then we wonder why they get to college, and they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? All you told me is what not to do. And so we got to teach them how to date. The purpose of dating is to find a spouse. It's like getting on a road with 2 exits, breakup and marriage. Those are the only potential outcomes. And if that's the case, what's the point of dating anyone unless I can see the relationship going the distance? And so we've got to teach them, I think, these principles, and I find them remarkably open to this stuff, because they know we've got a problem. They know our culture is full of single people who pretend like they're dating. And then the dating people behave like they're married, and the married people seem to think they're single. Everything is out of order, and they know it. But just because they know there's a problem doesn't mean they know the solution. But ultimately, I'll be honest with you, the reason why teenagers do not know how to date today is because it's 100% our fault, because we forgot how to date our own spouses in marriage. I met a wife recently, and she said, Jason, I've been married for 30 years. She said, do you know the last date that my husband took me on? She said it was the night that he proposed to me 30 years ago, and she's never been on another date since. Contrast that. A friend of mine in Texas, he's been married for 20 years. He has never missed his weekly date night in 20 years with his wife. Rain or shine, he takes her on a date. It doesn't matter if the kids are sick in the living room and like throwing up in buckets. They don't care. They'll drug them out in Benadryl and have a date in the kitchen. Like, they're going to have their date. And I'm telling you, that guy's kids are going to know how to date because the parents never forgot how to date. And so as easy it is to kind of look out in the culture, oh, look at all those problems the world has, I think we got to start right here. And so I think when we begin to give the kids these principles of the purpose of dating, they get it. One high school girl, I remember she came up to me and she said, you know what? She said, you're right, Jason. She said, you don't go to high school to find a husband. She said, you go to high school to find your bridesmaids. I said, girl, you get the point, to take your time. Fifth point, I would say, parent networking. Get to know other parents. Oh, your son's a sophomore, mine is too. Like, it is so important that your kids have friends who have parents who have the same values that you do. So they see they're not the only kid in Mexico with a curfew. You also get good strategies from other parents. One dad told me what he does for his boys is his house. He said, my house is the cool house. I got a basketball court out front, a swimming pool out back. I've got video games in the basement, frozen pizzas, energy drinks. He said, I have everything a teenage boy could want. in my house. He said, so where do you think my boy and all his little friends want to be every day of the week? My house. He said, so I don't have to worry about them being down the street trying to fund their friend's dad's porn collection, because they just want to be in my house. And so you get these good strategies by being around our good parents. Point number 6, internet and media safety. Dude, you have to become computer literate. I mean, some of you don't even know how to open an email attachment, and your kid is like hacking into the government's website for fun. We have to catch up, okay? And I know, look, I get it. It's overwhelming. It's hard to keep up on this stuff. Because it's like, oh, is my router safe? And what about this screen and that screen? It can be overwhelming. So a couple tools that we found to be helpful. One, there's a website called CovenantEyes.com. Covenant Eyes is an artificial intelligence for like a filter where it'll detect pornography on their screens, phones, tablets, PCs, MacBook, and send you a report every single day. It's more focused on accountability though. There's other things that focus on more the filtering. One is called Canopy. It's an app, C-A-N-O-P-Y, and that I'm not sure how it works with Spanish cell phone providers, but that one might be work for blocking the content. Another website you could use is called pluggedin.com. Pluggedin.com. Pluggedin.com is focus on the family. That will give you movie, television, video game, and music reviews. So if your kid is like, Mom, can we watch Game of Thrones tonight? You're going to be like, no, that's porn, here's why. And then you explain. Even the video games. I was at my kid's friend's birthday party for his football team, 10-year-old kids. And they come inside and they're like, oh, let's play video games. What should we play? The kid puts in Grand Theft Auto. This is a video game that looks like a little race car game. But like, I pulled the mom aside and I said, ma'am, I know I just met you, and I'm not going to tell you how to run your family, but I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that you don't know that video game they just put in. Your kid can drive his car downtown, get out of the car and go in a strip club, watch X-rated strippers, then come out and go get a prostitute in the car, sleep with her, it shows you the full X-rated act. If you don't like that prostitute, you can kick her out of the car, run over her with the vehicle, murder her, get his money back out of her purse, and the video game will take an account for all the money going in and out of his account, and then he can just drive on his way. So after the mom recovered consciousness from the living room floor, she said, how am I supposed to know this? I get a little video game off the shelf and I'm bringing porn in my house? That's why I recommended her, pluggedin.com. Movie, television, video game, and music reviews. So if you want to go on a date night with your wife and watch a movie, check it out on Plugged In. My wife said, let's watch this. I'll pull it up, like, do you know it has all that stuff? She's like, whoa, I have no idea. Let's pick something else. So Plugged In is a helpful resource. Our website is chastity.com. chastity.com. We also have castidad.com, but if you go to chastity.com, we've got hundreds of videos, resources for parents, books, all kinds of stuff there. If you're struggling with some questions like gender, just go to chastity.com/gender. Struggling kid with same-sex attractions, chastity.com/SSA. We've got content on homosexuality, pornography addiction, marriage counseling, all kinds of stuff, everything at chastity.com. And so get familiar with these resources, because look, this isn't just about protecting our kids from porn anymore. This is about saving the marriage from porn. You know, one girl told me, she said, Jason, I found out my dad looks at porn. She said, I used to look up to him. Now I can't even look at him. I thought he was a better man than that. I thought he was different. She said, Jason, my dad is lusting after girls 2 years older than I am, while my mom's sleeping in the next room. I met another girl. She said, I've been looking at pornography every day for 5 years. Because she said 5 years ago is when I found my dad's pornography. And his addiction became mine. And he doesn't know that I look, and he doesn't know that I know he looks, that his addiction has become mine. And so this isn't just about rescuing the kids, it's about saving the marriage and stuff. Because I cannot expect my kid to live a lifestyle of purity that I'm not willing to embrace myself. We have to be in this as a family. That's why with things like Covenant Eyes, you don't tell the kid, we're going to know what website you're looking at. You tell them, we're going to put these on all the computers in our family. You can know what website Dad's looking at. Dad can know what websites your sister's looking at. We're just going to hold each other accountable as a family. And the way I try to think of it is I've got this little thing on my iPhone, that if I simply hit the button that says screen sharing, pop, my whole cell phone will show up on the TV in the living room for the whole family to see. I want to live with my phone in such a way that screen sharing could be on 24 hours a day. Anything I see on here is good enough for my 2-year-old to watch on the living room. If we're willing to embrace it like that, the kids are more likely to follow. Because they will not always obey you, but they will never fail to imitate you. And so we've got to set up that internet safety. Point number 7, if you really want your kid to listen to you, you have to ask them the right questions. One girl came to me and she said, I'm thinking of giving away my virginity to this boy. And I wanted to give her all this advice, but I didn't. Instead, I just asked her why. Why do you want to give that gift to that boy? And she said, I don't know. I'm like, no, why do you want to give that gift to that boy? And she thought about it. And she said, I want to be wanted. I said, that's an honest answer. Do you think he wants you? And she said, I know he wants me. I'm like, no. Do you think he wants you? She's like, no. I go, what do you think he really wants? She's like, he just wants sex. I go, is that all you want? She's like, no, I'm going to break up with him tomorrow. I'm going to send him a text message right now. I'm like, you go, girl. And it's like, I didn't tell her what to do. I just asked her the right questions, and she owned it. It's like after one of the school shootings happened up in America, a man was asked, if you could tell those teenage murderers anything, what would you have told them? And he said, you know what? I wouldn't tell them anything. I just listen to them, because that's the one thing apparently nobody bothered to do. We have to learn to listen. And so it's so much more important. A friend of mine does evangelization in gay and lesbian bars in Chicago. And when he told me that, I'm like, wow, you must be a real popular guy, just kind of walking into a lesbian bar with your catechism. Like, how does that go over? He's like, no, we don't do that. I'm like, I know, but how do you evangelize? And he said, oh, we talk about the weather, the sports teams, all that stuff. I'm like, I know, but like, how do you talk about God? And he said, often we don't. I'm like, well, how is this evangelization? And he said, look, you don't always have to be the mouth of Christ. Sometimes you're just supposed to be his ears. He said, I've been doing this for 3 years. He said, now I have gay male prostitutes calling my cell phone at 3 o'clock in the morning when they're thinking of committing suicide because they know I'm a really good listener. To me, that's where the church needs to be at right now, more than anything, is learning to listen. Things like gender dysphoria, we're treating it like it's nothing but a culture war, and it is. And culture is at stake. But the kids suffering with this are not the culture warriors, they're the casualties of the culture war. They're individuals. This is not just an ideology we need to conquer. These are individuals that need pastoral care. Like one of them came up to me and he said, Jason, I'm trans. I said, okay, let's talk. We talked for a long time. And he started talking about his family. And he got 2 older sisters, 2 younger sisters, and they can do no wrong. The parents love them, affirm them, affection, attention, but him, he's never good enough. He's got grade A grades. He's an athlete. Nothing he can do is ever good enough for his parents. And I said, do you think if you were born a girl, you would have been loved the way your sisters were loved? And he said, I know I would have. And here we are. We've listened to the dysphoria. It's crying out for legitimate need. And the answer isn't to transform into a girl. Your ache is not to become a woman. Your ache is to be loved, because that is what God created you for. And this is a false solution. But if we're not listening to the dysphoria in a careful way, we're likely to misdiagnose, oh, that's just a trans kid. There is no such thing as a trans kid, because God has created us male and female. Yes, many have gender dysphoria, and they need to be loved through this. But when we throw our kids on puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, we're sterilizing the kids for life, what's happening to them. Now in America, it's gone nuts in the state of Oregon. Portland, Oregon, you're a 20-year-old girl, you want to get a tattoo of a flower on your ankle? You're not old enough, you're only 20. Oh, you want to use a tanning salon? You're only 18. You can't use a tanning salon. At 17 you can't use it, 18 you can. Oh, but if you want to cut both of your breasts off because you identify as non-binary, you can do that at the age of 15 without your parents' permission in the state of Oregon. I mean, gone. And so what we've got to do is realize, you know what? There is a massive culture war. A friend of mine, he said it feels like the devil is making a run for it over the last several years. Things have accelerated. And so we need to step up our game. I mean, the Catholic identity of Mexico, as you know, is at stake. And if you could go the way of the Philippines, where they're really fighting and staying strong, or go the way of Ireland, lost their Catholic identity altogether. And so we need to be able to look at what's going on around, read the signs of the times, and act. And so when it comes to kids, though, if we want to make an impact on them, we need to first learn how to listen before knowing how to speak. Now, the 8th point is the opposite of that. We need to talk. And so don't just give them the talk, give them thousands of them. A lot of parents ask me, when do I give my kid the chastity talk? Like it's a bomb you like drop on your kid. We're done with that. It's like, no, you don't do that with English and history. Like, when do I give my kid the Spanish talk? When do we have the history lesson? No, they get 12 years of that before they go to college. Same thing with human sexuality. Start early. Obviously age appropriate, and you know as well as I do, every kid is different. The church will never say, at age 12, say this. At age 14, say that, because every day a kid is different. You know, as parents, some of your kids are so curious. Some kids are 14, and they couldn't care less how babies are made, and then along comes your 8-year-old, Mommy, how did the baby get in your belly? Oh, God put the baby in my belly. I know God put the baby in the belly, but how did God put that baby in that belly? They want answers. Like, every kid is different. And so, that's why the church is not in charge of the sex education of your kid. You are. Because every single kid is unique. That's why when the public schools usurp that authority, put the kids all together and give them sex ed, it's child abuse. Like, that is not how to educate these kids on the intimate questions of human sexuality. But we've got to be the ones to speak up. And it can't just be the mom. A lot of times the dad is like, well, you're the mom. You're the religious, ethical, spiritual person. You talk to him about that. And she's like, well, you're the dad. You need to talk to him about girls. Okay, we'll go fishing. Son, do you have any questions about girls? No. Okay, we're done with that. Let's get spanked. It ain't gonna work, because here's the deal. If mom talks about religion and morality and spirituality, and dad doesn't say anything, the boys will assume dad disagrees with mom, but he's being respectful because he knows, wink, wink, dad, you know boys are going to be boys. Because if you really agree with mom over there, all religious mom, why are you so quiet? Your silence is deafening the family. And so father must speak. In terms of birds and the bees, the church recommends let dad talk to boys, let mom handle that stuff with girls. But for chastity, father and mother need to both be talking to sons and daughters. Could it be a little bit awkward? You betcha. A friend of mine is a professional chastity speaker, and he thought, oh, this is going to be great. He told his son how babies are made. The boy was disgusted. He said, Dad, how long have people been doing this? I said, tell him the 1960s. And he said, Dad, is there any other way? That's pretty much it, son. And then his little girl came up to him and said, Daddy, I want to be like the Blessed Virgin Mary. And the dad said, that's great. She said, yes, I want to get pregnant before I'm married. And the dad's like, oh, that's not the lesson there, sweetheart. And so, you know what? It could be a little bit awkward, but here's the deal. The awkwardness is part of the authenticity of it. And so get over your insecurities, which is point number 9. Get over your insecurities when it comes to talk about this stuff. A lot of parents are scared to death. Well, what if my kid says, Dad, were you a virgin when you got married? I wasn't a spotless virgin. I look like a hypocrite. Your authority does not come from your perfection. It comes from your parenthood that is given to you by God. If you've made mistakes and you've repented, you're not a hypocrite. You're a convert. And kids respect authenticity. Now, obviously, your past is your business. Your kids have no right to that information. But if you think disclosing some of it could be helpful, that's up to you and your spouse. All that matters is that you don't let yourself be muzzled because you don't have a perfect past. Kids can spot a fake. If you have not repented of those sins, you probably should just stay quiet, honestly, because kids are so good at sniffing out a fake. But we've got to get over our insecurities when it comes to talking about this stuff. Point number 10, and this is no doubt the most important one. Chastity is a virtue, like courage or honesty, that apply to your sexuality. All of the virtues are more easily caught than they are taught. So if I want my kid to be humble, if I practice that, they'll probably pick it up. If I want my boys to respect women, if I respect my wife, I think they'll get it. Same thing with chastity. Don't expect for a minute that your children will obey the church's teachings on sex before marriage if you refuse to obey the church's teachings on sex inside of marriage. Chastity in marriage. People, that doesn't mean abstinence. People get the words confused. A mom came to me. She said, I was coming to your talk tonight, and my husband said, where are you going tonight? She said, I'm going to the chastity talk. And he looked at her and he said, don't get any ideas while you're there, okay? All right, that's a misunderstanding, okay? Chastity does not mean no sex. It means you use the gift of sex according to God's plan for your family. And And so what does that mean in marriage? Obviously no pornography and adultery and things like that, but it also means, well, what is sex? It's your wedding vows spoken in the body. So your vows were, will you come here today freely? Yes. Without reservation. To give yourselves to one another? Yes. Totally? Yes. Faithfully? Yes. Will you welcome children? Yes. And then you leave the church, and on the sanctuary of your wedding bed, you speak those vows with your body. I give my body to you freely. I'm not coercing you, I'm not manipulating you, I'm not pressuring you. It's a free gift of self. It's not driven by addiction. Free gift. It is total. I hold back nothing from you, not even my fatherhood. It is faithful, not just with my body, but my imagination, and it's fruitful. It's never sterilized, contracepted, or aborted. And when some couples hear that, it's like, wait a minute, you had us until then, but seriously, no contraception? What are we supposed to have, like 10 kids, 15 kids? What do you want, us to use the calendar rhythm method? That had a failure rate of 30%. Personally, I am a huge fan of the rhythm method. My parents tried it, it didn't work, and I'm here today. So that's really good for me. But if I want to plan my family, we will use natural family planning, NFPs, fertility awareness methods, no side effects, and it's more than 99% effective. Unfortunately, young couples hardly know anything about NFP. They confuse it with the rhythm method. I get talked to engaged couples in San Diego, and they give them a survey to see what they know about natural family planning. They asked this woman, in one sentence, define natural family planning. She said, oh, that's a way to have sex that meets church requirements. Now, doesn't that sound like fun? That's literally all she knew. Oh, that's the Vatican roulette thing. Oh yeah, like a bunch of celibates can know anything. But this idea that celibates can't understand love is insane. Just think about it. I'm a married man, so I know one woman, and that's pretty much it. And she'd probably even argue, I don't even know her that well. I mean, she even told me once, she's like, Jason, you know, you're not a very good listener. I said, honey, I'm a motivational speaker, not a motivational listener. Now, she didn't think that was very funny, but I thought it was rather witty on my part. But a priest is not confined to one, because he's hearing thousands of confessions of things spouses may not even tell each other. Look at the day of one life of a priest. He could get up at 8 in the morning and celebrate Mass, give someone First Communion. 12 o'clock, hear someone's confession who's been away from the faith for 40 years. 3 o'clock, marry somebody. 6 in the evening, do marital counseling. 2 o'clock in the morning, be by someone's bedside as they pass into eternal life. And you want to multiply that by 2,000 years of the wisdom of the saints and throw it away? Because what could the celibates know about sexuality? It would leave us poor. Because NFP taught me my wife's body is perfect. She doesn't need pills. She doesn't need drugs. She doesn't need barriers, implants. You know what her body needs? To be understood. Because if we can understand her fertility, then instead of suppressing it with chemicals to conform to our desires, we can conform our desires to the perfect way her body has already been created. And to me, this is authentic sexual liberation. Does it require times of abstinence? Yeah, but couples who use NFP have as much intimacy as those who don't. They simply time it differently. But in the end, they have far more, because they have a divorce rate under 4%. The church is on business. Unfortunately, when some people hear, oh, that involves some abstinence, they don't want to learn about it. A friend of mine, he and his wife couldn't have kids. They go to the fertility doctor. The doctor said, I need you and your wife to abstain for sex for 30 days so I can chart her fertility precisely. My friend looked at the doctor and he's like, really? 30 days of abstinence? The doctor's like, yes, 30 days of abstinence. My friend said, does it need to be 30 consecutive days of abstinence? The doctor's like, yeah, 30 days of abstinence. The nurse in the room was a nun, a 70-year-old religious celibate woman, and my friend said, a month? The nun looked at him and she said, you'll be all right. Okay, I'm gonna make it, you know, and they were able to abstain, and they were able to have a family and all that. But it's the big picture, zooming out, but like, are we in this together or not? This is why the church honors your family with the title, The School of Love. Because everything we need to know of love, you learn in the family. Because if you can love the people you live with, you can love anybody on the face of the earth. I mean, love thy neighbor is a piece of cake. I hardly ever see those people. Love these nut jobs in my house? That's a totally different command altogether. But I think if your kids can go off to college and they know how to say, I love you, I forgive you, and I'm sorry, I think you've done an awesome job raising those kids. But if they go to college and they get married and they don't know how to say, I love you, I forgive you, and I am sorry, good luck in that marriage one day. Because I don't know about your marriages, but some days that's all we have to say to each other. I love you, forgive you, I'm sorry. If we couldn't say that, there wouldn't be a whole lot to say. But if we can embrace this and start living it out. And yeah, you know what? It's messy. Marriage is a lot harder than I ever anticipated marriage is going to be. It is messy, it is difficult, but God is with us in that mess. And I think if we can just embrace this, and even in the mess of it all, the kids see the big picture of God's plan for human love, even if it's messy. You know, one girl told me, she said, Jason, your timing is very good. I said, why is that? She said, because I was going to give away my virginity tomorrow on my 16th birthday. But she said, not after your talk. She said, my dad was going to take me to the movie theaters where I was going to meet my boyfriend. And then we were going to pretend to go to the movies, and then we're going to the parking lot. And I was going to get the back seat of his pickup truck and give him my virginity in the back seat of his pickup truck. She said, but after your talk tonight, she was this inner city girl, she had all this attitude. She's like, I am not giving it to that boy in the back seat of his dumpy little pickup truck. She said, I'm going to give it to my husband on our honeymoon in Tahiti with candlelight and romantic music. Man, because when you see God's plan for human love, then lust looks boring. And so that is our job, to show the glory of God's plan for human sexuality, to help you live this out and share it with your families. We do have some resources that we've shipped down from the States to be available for you. For the girls, my wife and I wrote this one in English and in Spanish, and it's called How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul, 21 Secrets for Women. It's basically a manual on how to avoid losers, okay? And so the first chapter is the top 10 guys to avoid, so she might recognize some. And like I said, this is in Spanish. And then also, we wrote this one for the girls. My wife did called Pure Womanhood. It's a little short booklet. In the middle is her dump him list, okay? It's like 16 things. If he says any of them, has any of those, it's over. And then Pure Love, and then in Spanish, Amor Puro. What's that?
Can you repeat the title of the first
This one's called Pure Womanhood. How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul. Then Pura Feminidad, something like that. And then Amor Puro, Pure Love. And then for the men, people are like, where's the book for guys? Guys don't read, okay? Show us your manhood, there's pictures for your friends. So this is Masculinidad Pura, and then Pure Manhood. Not only do we have these downstairs in Spanish, we have 6 books in Spanish. We've got them on our website, chastity.com. But it's a lot of money to ship stuff to Mexico. If you want, we can ship some stuff for you for free if you can't afford it. Or if any of you are involved in ministry that has any connections to the printing world, let us know. I will give you the rights to all of our books for free to print to as many people in Mexico that you want to give them to. As long as they're absolutely yours. So what we'll do, there's a woman, a sister just emailed me yesterday. I'm flying home from the States. I'm flying here from the States, and she said, oh, she's with this group called Girls Town, and she said, we have 3,500 girls. We sent her the files. She said, we're printing 3,500 copies of the book. We don't have to pay a penny, and all the girls get the stuff. So we're not asking for any return on this stuff. If you want to print this stuff, any book we have, everything is yours. We have like 5, 6, 7 books now translated, a biography you did in the Pope, all kinds of stuff. Anything you want, it's completely yours. You may be thinking, well, okay, well, how do we get a hold of you to do that? You can reach us through chastity.com, or after this talk, I'll be at a booth downstairs for about a half hour before we have to run to the airport. That booth will be selling all the books, and then I'll be there. Is it Familia Unida? Unida Familia? Something like that. So Familia Unida. So we'll be there for a half hour before I have to run off to the airport, and I can give you my business card. You can email me. We'll send you the digital proofs, and you can just set Mexico, God willing, ablaze with this message. But today is the Feast of St. Therese. And St. Therese, the little flower, said it is a much better thing to talk to God than to talk about God. And so let's close our time together in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father in heaven, we thank you for the gift of our vocations and our families. We ask you to bless especially our children, both in the religious life, spiritual children. We place all their faces and their names before you, asking you to bless them in their future vocation. If you're calling them to the married life, please bless even their future husbands or wives, that they may come from good families. If you're calling them to the priesthood, the religious life, give them faith and courage and joy to give themselves to you as fully as you have given yourself to them. And we pray for our families, for protection, for peace, for the gift of purity, and increase in the gift of prayer, that we might image your love on earth and be our own little Nazareth in whatever way that we can. And we entrust all of this to Our Lady as we pray, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Saint Teresa of Lisieux, pray for us. Thank the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And I look forward to meeting you downstairs at the booth. God bless you, and thanks so much.
Un mundo tan desafiante, nuestro reto es ser la luz, dar amor día con